You know, China saw a dramatic increase in divorce filings following the lifting of the shelter-in-place restrictions. Jennifer Hargrave, she is a family law attorney here in the Metroplex, and she joins us now on the KRLD Newsline. Jennifer, do you think that this is going to happen to Texas couples as well?
Yes, Kristen, I do think it's going to happen. I think that there's been a lot of stress on our families as people have quarantined with job losses and being stuck together and not being able to be in their usual routines. And I think it exacerbates so much of the conflict that couples are experiencing.
Now, do you suggest that this is the ultimatum? Do you think there's ways around it?
Well, there certainly are ways around it. If both people are committed to working on the marriage, and this whole quarantine has brought to light some serious fractures in your relationship, it's a great time to engage in marriage counseling. I'll tell you, there is a program called Discernment counseling, which I think is really helpful. And the goal is to help couples really decide, are we in this or are we not? And so I just throw that out there for people to look into because I think it's incredibly helpful.
How can people follow through with a divorce with the courts still not necessarily taking in cases?
Right. So our courts have told us that they're going to be closed through June 1st, except for emergency hearings and some other limited hearings. Many of our courts locally have really adapted to the Zoom hearings. So we actually are having some hearings via Zoom. So even though the courts aren't open for normal business, they're still able to hear matters. But, you know, the court doesn't need to be open to file for divorce. Everything is electronic. It's been that way for years. So we can actually begin the divorce process. And in Texas, there's a mandatory 60-day waiting period. So we can use this time while the courts aren't open for general matters to really get things in order, pull things together, and frankly, to see if settlement's an option.
What is the collaborative divorce process? Is that what you're talking about, people trying to work to come to some type of agreement?
I'm so glad you asked. The collaborative divorce process is a process where people commit to working outside of the courts. So we don't even need the courts to be open, but they choose, they say to each other, you know what, we are going to do this without the necessity of court intervention. And they each hire a lawyer and they work together with a team of skilled professionals. Usually we'll bring in a mental health professional to help us work on kiddo issues and, you know, general communication. We'll bring in a financial professional who can be tremendously helpful in helping us come up with different options for dividing the estate. So, you know, whenever possible, I love to at least educate people about the collaborative divorce process because it can be such a useful process for many people facing divorce.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Any last words of advice?
You know, I would just say one of the difficult things if you're facing divorce is knowing how to even have that conversation with the other party. And so I'm just going to leave you with my three rules when you're about to have that conversation. The first is avoid anger, right? Avoid telling the party when you're in the heat of the moment that you want a divorce. That's never helpful. We want to avoid avoidance. You know, if you're just living in denial and not confronting the issue, that's a huge problem too. And of course, we want to avoid accusations. We know divorce is never just solely one party's fault. So to the extent you can have a productive conversation about where you're at in your marriage and decide together whether you're going to pursue counseling or whether it's time to begin the divorce process.
Jennifer Hargrave with, again, the Hargrave Law Attorney here in the Metroplex. Thank you so much for your time.